And welcome to another edition of the Michigan Recruiting Insider. We did last week's episode, and little did we know, as we were wrapping up last week's episode, they were wrapping up firing Sherrone Moore. I honestly, I honestly did not know that was going. A lot of times I have an inkling something is going on. I didn't have a clue that was going on at the time we were doing that episode. I honestly did not. A series of events had unfolded that morning that it was a surreal day when you consider they had from a program perspective began the day, began the week, um, began the period like, hey, this is going to be business as usual. They had just hired a coach that morning. He had just interviewed, what's the guy, the quarterback coach? He had just interviewed Mike Shula, who was probably going to be hired as the quarterback coach. He had just interviewed him that morning. That's how unexpected it was that he was going to be dismissed that day. And that on the heels that he had just hired Kerry Combs over the weekend. But the affair that he had obviously had lied about, had come to light as the staffer he was having the relationship with went in and divulged that relationship. And as soon as Michigan found out about that relationship that had been rumored about for some time, let me correct something for the record real quick as I introduce you guys. First, let me introduce you guys. Brice Marich, how you doing?
Good. Missed quite a few interesting episodes. I heard it went well, but like I said, I actually didn't have my phone on me all day on Wednesday, so I had a fun experience as well. Finally seeing hundreds of texts come my way and what happened, but yeah, it's a lot to unpack.
Steve Lorenz, we had a great interview with Brady Marchese, who I said his name right. It was a terrific interview, and very few people have watched it as a result of what happened last Wednesday.
Yeah, it seems like it was about 7 years ago at this point, that interview was. Brady gave a great interview. I think it definitely built up the excitement for him to become a Wolverine. And then, last Wednesday evening will be one of those, like a where were you moment. Like, I could tell you exactly what I was doing when I got the text messages and stuff. Then it was kind of a blur, and it's really sort of been a blur since then, right? I mean, the last thing I think we thought we'd be talking about today was replacements, new general managers. Is the class going to stay together? Just crazy. Only at Michigan, right? I think we say that every week. Just kind of feels like it never ceases to fail or never ceases to amaze.
Yeah, unbelievable. Just unbelievable. But I need to correct something that I said. I referred to the investigation because there had been rumors for some time about this relationship that had been going on. And I said they looked into it. I referred to it as an investigation. And I said, well, not really an investigation. And I said, yeah, the War Manual investigated it. Let me be clear, because as I read about it, this Jenner Block investigation, let me be clear about what it was. It was an investigation. It was not a War and Manual investigation. There were rumors about this relationship for some time, and someone obviously reported it, and it was a report that went in, and HR investigated it. Michigan investigated it. So it was, outside of the hands of, it was a Michigan investigation. And it was looked into, and obviously they couldn't find anything to dispute their denials. And so you go on, and rumors persist, but if nothing can refute the denials, you go on. But then she went in and divulged it. And it was like, man, I remember I was still sitting here working on the show. And I remember I got a call from an agent. And he said they just fired Sherrone. I got a call from an agent before I heard it from anybody from Michigan. And I called. I said, did they just fire Sherrone? He's like, yeah, man, they just fired him. Went in, fired. Award went in and fired Sherrone. And then he went in and he told the staff. And then he went in and he told the team. And that was that. And they said he was breathing. They said he was breathing fire about it. Obviously, I mean, you would be upset too, I suppose, at that time. But it was a joke, to say the least. And at that point, now you start to think about what now? What now with these recruits? Michigan has lost 2 recruits. And so, Brice, let's get on the topic at hand. How does this affect? And then we can start talking about replacement candidates. And because they can really, there's a chance here, despite the massive upheaval, there's a chance here for Michigan to really maintain the track that they were on and be okay if the damage is just losing 2 recruits. So take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, I right now, as far as today, they only have lost 2. Tight end Matt Moose Ludwig. He actually, technically, I don't know if he can, but Texas Tech put out there that he signed with Texas Tech. So that's not a huge shocker since Texas Tech was the runner-up in that recruitment anyways. They made the playoffs. They're doing big things. That's a loss for sure. 6'4", 250 pounds, freakish athletic traits, had amazing track times. So there was a lot to like about him. And I thought that was a guy that you could see actually play. I mean, Michigan loves using the tight end position, the usage there. He had a great relationship with Steve Kasula, who actually did a pretty good job of, getting in communication with these guys. And that's all the assistant coaches of like, hey, this is a jolt to all of us too, but the program's going to keep moving. We're going to find the right leadership and stick with the class and the guys that you've been with. Obviously, he wanted a different direction. You can't fault the kid at all for that. And then they lost Bear McOrder to Auburn as well. So those are the 2. And I know with Bear, that was an underrated commitment at the time that wasn't much talked about just because of his rating. But a lot of schools, and I even know Georgia sniffed around when he reopened or got released from his letter of intent. So he was, that's a tough loss, but I feel like offensive linemen are a little easier to find. Maybe not compared to other positions like a quarterback, right? And so he hasn't opened up, but I want to just quickly address Peter Bork. He's the 2027 quarterback commit for next cycle. He just got picked up 2 offers from Penn State and Virginia Tech. So Matt Campbell and James Franklin, they're both they're sharks circling the waters right now. That's not even just, those 2 programs. That's all the programs in the country. Most, if not all, the signees have probably been hearing from some sort of different camps and programs of like, hey, if you do decide to reopen, this is a good fallback option. But as I've collected many of them and been in communication, they're in a wait and see mode, right? I think Michigan has done a really good job. Like I noted, the assistant coaches and especially Biv Poggi have done a phenomenal job of kind of keeping this class together. And like I said, in that wait and see approach of who they're going to get next in leadership and telling them like, things are going to go as clockwork. I mean, they're right now, the waves are a little up and down, but it's a roller coaster, right? There's going to be ups and there's going to be downs in life. And Michigan's trying to stabilize the program as best as they can. So only to lose 2, that's very crucial. I think the biggest thing to know, and I've said this in the message boards, but it's the early enrollees, right? Because these guys have to make a decision way sooner than others, right? Because they're going to have to decide, all right, are we coming to Michigan? Some of them supposedly were coming up, I think, in the next week or two. So they have to decide, without a head coach in place right now, is that still the program I want to go to, or am I enrolling early to somewhere else? So I think that's why we saw those two dominoes with Bear and Moose fall, because those are both early enrollees. There's some other guys in the boat that I'm kind of monitoring. Malachi Lee, offensive tackle from Hawaii. He's the guy that I know Texas has been presumed, and there's been kind of buzz that maybe Texas is again kicking the tires there and kind of hoping to get back in the mix if he does reopen his signing. So we'll see. But I think overall, you have to be very happy with where things stand, because you didn't lose Savion Hyder. You didn't lose Carter Meadows. You haven't lost your big timers yet. And the biggest thing on top of that, too, your actual roster's still pretty much intact. And that's as much as important as well.
Yeah, Steve. But guys are antsy. That means your recruiting class, players on the roster. That means the timeline for hiring a coach is very important. So Michigan has got to be mindful of getting a coach in place, definitely before the new year, but probably next week. You want to try to get a coach in place next week, because that's probably the pacing of what the recruits are looking at. The players are probably looking at the bowl game. But if your recruits are by the time you get to Christmas and coming out of the Christmas holiday, they're probably looking at it like, especially your early enrollees, like, man, what am I going to do? So Michigan has got to be on the board, you would think, hopefully by next week, if they're going to keep the rest of this class intact.
Yeah, I mean, January 2nd is the most important day on Michigan's calendar right now. I agree. They got to get it done well before then, but that's the day the enrollees, the early guys come in, and that's the day the portal opens, right? You have to have everything in place by the time that's done. I mean, I think if you're Michigan, you're hoping that you're, depending on who you hire and what their individual situation is right now, I think you're hoping that the new coach is standing on the sidelines during the Citrus Bowl, kind of like I remember Rich Rod did Lloyd Carr's last game. You want it in place, right? So, I think that the longer this goes on, the more doubt starts to creep in with guys. The other thing with the recruits, though, too, that is worth noting is a new hire can do a lot to maybe calm some of these guys down, but retention, as far as which assistants are able to stay on and which ones depart, I also think is going to end up having an impact as well. So, I mean, if you'd have told me that Ludwig and McWhorter were the two guys that would have entered first, I would have pegged them to be among the last, actually, to enter as quickly as they did and commit elsewhere. I mean, Moose committed to Texas Tech, McWhorter to Auburn. So the fact they've been able to keep the rest of this class on so far, at least to me, means that they're all willing to see it out, because there's literally nothing stopping any of these guys from publicly coming out and saying, I'm going to look elsewhere. I'm going to enter the portal. So,
Yeah. I think, a lot has been said about Biff Poggi and the job that he's done with the guys on the team. Understandably so. Has been a steadying hand. Deserves a lot of credit for the resolve that he's shown the guys on the roster in these times. I think when it comes to the recruits, these coaches, the job that they've done in maintaining calm in the recruiting class, because these are when those relationships matter the most. There's nothing, absolutely nothing, preventing every member of that class from opening up his recruitment other than those coaches keeping them calm. and helping them to understand that time is on their side. Like they do have the luxury of time to see what develops here and still have the ability to select wherever else they want to go. You know, they probably have even more flexibility than a lot of guys on the team. Like you're going to be able to hop around to a lot of different places as a recruit. Maybe your flexibility is going to be a little more limited as an early enrollee, but as you know, as one of these other recruits, oh my man, that's going to enroll in the fall, man, you got a lot of flexibility. So you really don't have to jump. And the reason why you got to commend these coaches is because they're the most uncertain group of them all. Their options are the most limited. They don't know if they're going to be able to stay, and they don't know if they're going to be able to go. They don't know if they're going to have other jobs elsewhere. Certainly if they do have jobs elsewhere, they don't know if there's going to be on the level of a Michigan. So they're working only on the strength of, I got a job to do. I care about the kid that I recruited, and I might stay. I mean, that's to be commended. So those guys doing a lot of great loyal work in the face of extreme adversity to a man, because their lives, hey man, they just went to work doing a job, and they come off the practice field and it's like, what? You mean I gotta go home, tell my wife and kids we might not have a job? Just like that. No fault of their own. That's some bull. That's some bull right there. That's unbelievable. Unbelievable that it's like that. And you got to process that, keep yourself together, coach that team, and then get on the phone with all these recruits that you might not coach and tell them, because at least with the guys that you're coaching, you can get on the field and coach them, right? These recruits, you might not ever see, feel, or touch them and coach them on the field, but you still are working hard to maintain them for Michigan. I give those guys a lot of credit for that. That's big time. So let's start talking about some of these coaching candidates, though, guys. Starting with Kalen DeBoer. If you listen to the national media, Kalen DeBoer is not an option for Michigan. But you know what? This is why I love the national media. If it wasn't for times like these, there would be no reason for our site. There would be no reason for me. When I see these reports, I'm like, oh, thank God for them. Because this is when we can do what we do. This is what makes us so much more relevant. Because if they were tapped in, if they could really decipher and interpret, if they had real sources, they would know that Kalen said what he had to say. They would know that he was still on Michigan's list. And Michigan fans who have been around would know you don't just listen to national people who are, listen, if you're listening to a national person who just listened to what he said in a press conference and told you, well, Kalen DeBoer just said, oh, I have no interest in talking to anyone. Why do you need to listen to that media person? He didn't tell you anything that you didn't just hear with your own ears. What is the purpose of that person? I mean, they didn't give you any information. Could they give you any insight or perspective? Could they go inside that program and tell you, hey, is there anything to suggest that there might still be an opening there? There might still be any interest in doing anything else? None of those national people could tell you that. Now, what we could tell you is there's no signed extension. What we could tell you is this is the same playbook from Washington. And what happened at Washington? He wound up at Alabama. Now, I'm not telling you that he's going to wind up at Michigan. I am not telling you he's going to wind up at Michigan. What I am telling you is if they lose that game Friday night, he will be on Michigan's target list. Well, he's on Michigan's target list on Saturday. I mean, right now. If they lose that game Friday night, there will be a connection. Michigan will reach out if they lose that game Friday night. This I am telling you. Okay? So, with that, fellas, let's talk about Kalen DeBoer and his recruiting impact. Let's start with you, Steve. What do you think it will be?
I mean, Bama's recruiting really hasn't fallen off much, if at all, under DeBoer, right? I think that's the biggest thing to note. I think we know Michigan has the resources to continue to recruit well. I think with him being probably the biggest name that Michigan is after, I think by effect, he would be the one most likely to keep things as streamlined as compared to where they are right now. As far as his personal little bit, of course he's got Courtney Morgan, has been his right-hand guy since he went to Washington and followed him to Alabama. I think Michigan fans know what Courtney Morgan is capable of in that GM role. I think that would be a potential upgrade there. But overall, there's a reason he's kind of viewed as the top candidate in most fans' minds. I think it's because he's had the most success on the field. I think he's done a great job at Alabama. I mean, following Nick Saban had to be one of the toughest coaching gigs that any coach has ever had to go through, right? I mean, you're following maybe the best college coach of all time. And really, Bama's in the playoffs again, and has a team, I think, that's capable of making a run. We'll see. I mean, the playoffs are kind of interesting this year. But from a recruiting standpoint, he has a system in place, I think, that would keep Michigan where they are, if not maybe put a little bit of a higher ceiling on what they can do. I just get the sense that things would just be more organized from top to bottom under a guy like DeBoer than maybe they have been under Sherrone and even Jim, right? As well as they've always recruited. I think we could say that things haven't always been, the process hasn't always been streamlined as good as it probably could be or should be at a school like Michigan. So I think that's one spot where I think you would definitely see some upward mobility and some stability, on both the field and the recruiting aspect of things.
Brice Marich.
I think for me, the most enticing thing when it comes to Kalen DeBoer is the structure. Like Steve was saying, he would bring into place the personnel department, highlighting like Courtney Morgan, right? And I think, too, what's unique about him compared to the other candidates is he's got a sense of, he was in the Midwest at Eastern Michigan at one point. So he's got roots here around the Midwest, especially in the state of Michigan. Then he went west, so he's got West Coast ties out there, recruiting at Washington. And now he's got Southern ties being in Alabama for a few years. And you look at his recruiting classes, he's bringing in top guys. And I think what's even more enticing about him, he understands, especially extremely well, how NIL works at a top program. I think some of these other coaches, if they get hired, they've never been around some of these battles that are really NIL driven, really NIL, it's all NIL. And I think for him, he's got a better perception of how to handle those sort of recruitments because he's in them every day at Alabama. So I think he can handle that, manage that, and really bring, like I said, stability and a solid structure to Michigan. That's what Michigan really needs right now.
Yeah, listen, there is no question that Court would be a huge addition recruiting-wise. I mean, I think they would absolutely care. Court was big time when he was here. Michigan. The sole reason Michigan got Mason Graham was Courtney Morgan. Arguably the greatest defensive tackle in the history of Michigan football was discovered, was recruited by Courtney Morgan. So I'm sure he'd be like, you're welcome. Zeke Berry. That's a Court recruit. Keon Sabb, that's a court recruit. I mean, down at Alabama, Dijon Lee, a court recruit. I mean, Caleb Presley at Washington, that's a court recruit. You have a general manager. There are only a few guys, only a couple guys like him in the country that impact recruiting tangibly like that. That are not just guys that go and can negotiate contracts, but are actually relationship guys that can actually go and do recruiting, that can go out and not just do the sit down and talk numbers, but no, actually do the relationship building piece. The day-to-day, the week-to-week, have the connections out on the trail. The difference between NFL GM and college GM, NFL GM just talk to the agent, just do a contract. College GM, if you're going to take it a step farther and do what Courtney does and do that, which is different. So you almost don't want to just call Courtney just a GM. If you're going to do it like Courtney does it, he's like a general manager, personnel recruiting guy. Because most general managers don't recruit. He recruits. So he's going to be doing the relationship thing. He's going to be talking to players and, trainers and coaches and parents day to day, week to week, doing that thing. So it's not going to be just a money conversation at the very end or when they take a visit. It's going to be the nurturing process and building process over time. That's different. That's way different than a lot of other GMs, than most other GMs are even capable of doing. Even if other GMs want to try that, they can't. It's just outside of their capability. So it is a unique thing that he can bring to the table. And frankly, Michigan is understaffed in their personnel department right now. There's just not enough there. I think Sean McGee has a great structure. He brings the NFL kind of, concept of we are going to assign value, the NFL valuation to positions. But to be able to come in there and have a general manager who can recruit too, and then have other guys in the department who can scout, who can recruit, who can apply the valuation, who can shift the valuation according to what you land. Let's say you go out and land a guy. Let's say you put valuation on your receiver, right? And you overspend on receiver. You got to take it from somewhere. You're going to take it from defensive line. So we're going to have to shift the valuation of our entire, we're going to have to move them all around. You need somebody handling that on the fly. Right? But that should not just be one guy. That's a lot for one guy to handle. Right? That's why you got to throw a lot at it. And so you want him to be able to focus on negotiating contracts, doing recruiting, obviously building relationships, and then have all of those different recruiters, scouts, underneath him, guys who can do valuation underneath him. I think you get all of that in the fold. If you bring in Alabama up here, I think they would absolutely crush it at a Michigan, man. Absolutely crush it. And the added benefit of a Courtney is he comes in and he already has all of the donor relationships too. He has not just the donor relationships, he has all the the former player relationships. So he has relationships beyond anyone in the program right now. He has more relationships at Michigan than anybody in the program right now. No one in the program at Michigan right now can out-relationship Courtney Morgan. He can grow more money than anybody in the program right now.
That's a good point. I also think, too, I think he would dominate in the portal. I mean, look at some of the pickups Alabama's got in the portal. Cam Calhoun from Utah. That's a connection that Courtney Morgan nurtured and knew about, and he became, he's one of their top players over there at Alabama. There's just the relationships and the inroads when you have to do less work because you already have those connections and people telling you, hey, I got this kid coming up, Sam, that he's going to be a dude. He's going to be a dude, that takes so much work away. And on top of that, when you are talking about, okay, we're going to spend more on wideouts, so we got to take less from defensive linemen. Well, guess where they also excel? Alabama staff with Courtney Morgan. Evaluations. We saw that for Mason Graham when he wasn't ranked, the highest, or Kenneth Grant, right? Kenneth Grant was in like some 5-star coming out of high school, and they saw this mold. They could, clay of talent, they can mold and first rounder. So that's the other part of this that Michigan has to, or fans have to also understand, is there's the recruiting aspect and then there's the poor aspect. And I think with this staff in place, if you get Courtney Morgan, which I would assume he would obviously come with Kalen DeBoer, but you're going to get the whole package. That's kind of how I see if they were to land him.
Yeah, it'd be huge. Let's move over to Kenny Dillingham. I think this is, if you follow social media, which a lot of them do, this seems to be the guy that Brice is really excited about, right? This is like the not that Brice, but I guess we'll start with you, Brice. Since your namesake is like really feeling Kenny Dillingham, right? I think there's some pre-existing relationships there. I know. I think there's some familiarity with his quarterback coach, Donovan Dooley, as well. And so, he recruited Brice in high school. He also recruited Dante Moore. And that's my familiarity with Kenny Dillingham, because I remember feeling like Michigan is early on, feeling like Michigan's going to get Dante Moore. And then, he wasn't really feeling Matt Weiss at all. And then all of a sudden, what's going on? He's feeling this dude, Kenny Dillingham. I start hearing that. And then, of course, he winds up at UCLA, but he winds up at Oregon anyway down the stretch. So what about Kenny Dillingham?
Yeah, I think for me personally, I actually, we talked about this before the podcast, just seeing his comments where they felt very non-committal about going back to, Arizona State. And it's like, I kind of joked, he almost felt like he laid out his conditions of what he would like with his neighbors. He really likes his neighbors. His parents got a house next to him. It's like, if you're Michigan, it's like, done. Look at the whole freaking street for you. It's like, if that's what you need, right? But I think he would be, the thing with recruiting, Sam and Steve, it's a lot of momentum, right? And who could bring that jolt and he could be that spark plug. I think out of all the list of candidates, he's the one that could really just get Michigan back in the right direction, really bring back the momentum on the trail and in the portal. I think looking at him, one, if you were to hire him, offensive recruiting, I think skyrockets. You see guys like Dakota Grant and, other Quinn Burrell. I think guys in the 2027 class wideouts are going to be very enticed because they're going to know he's going to throw the ball. He's going to just kind of spread out. It's going to be more open off on offense. Not to say he's not going to run it. He had Cam Scattaboo, so it's not like they never ran it in Tempe, but that more open of offense, more kind of air raid-ish offense, I think is more appealing to more prospects, especially the skill position. And he's a young, energetic, passionate coach. And I think for me personally, he's the most likable to, if you're looking for that Dusty May type of hire, like that upcoming type of coach where you think you can get the best bang for your buck. And I think while some have told me and how they feel he's more of a boom or bust type of coach, I'm willing to take that shot with him because I know he's going to dominate on the recruiting trail and in the portal. I mean, you look at some of the guys he got in the portal. He got Jordan Tyson from Colorado, who's going to be a top wide receiver in the NFL coming up here. Everything about him, I think, would be a match made in heaven for Michigan. And this is my pick for if I could get any of the coaches on this list, he would be the guy I would want the most.
Steve?
I like Brice's Dusty May comparison. He doesn't have any connections up to this area as far as what he's coached through. I don't think that stuff matters. I mean, I'm trying to think of like if there's been a negative on him, what it would be. I kind of think he might be the best possible candidate. I mean, weird to say about somebody who'd be my youngest brother, but is a guy who, I think we talk about upward mobility. Talk about a place that's not easy to win. I mean, didn't he follow in after Herm Edwards? I mean, Arizona State was in the gutter when he came in, and it didn't take long. And if you want to talk about recruiting, Oregon has always recruited at it. He understands, Oregon is as aggressive a program on the recruiting trail as there is in the country. So he's, he kind of built his name there. You talked about Dante Moore, Sam. There's plenty of other guys. I mean, some of the offensive, I believe he may have beaten Michigan for Kenyon Sadiq too at tight end. I think he was there when that recruitment happened. It might be a year off, but either way, they've been stacking elite talent on the offensive line, or on the offensive side of the ball forever. Another big question would be how would he approach it defensively? Would he bring his guys over from Arizona State? Would he mix it up? But recruiting wise, I think the most upward mobility would be with Dillingham. I think DeBoer would be a fine recruiter too. I just think Dillingham would have the best chance to take Michigan to an even higher level, provided the donors are on board, like the people that matter are totally on board and everyone's on the same page. I kind of like him more than I like pretty much any other candidate on the board. And he definitely did not shut anything down. The interview he did yesterday was probably, of any comment or no comment I've seen him throughout this whole deal, was the most non-committal. It was interesting. I think if he was angling for more money from Arizona State, I don't think he did a great job of
like. Yeah, he didn't say anything down. That was a hell of a tap dance. Yeah. I think he is extremely intriguing. He is familiar with recruiting at a big time program. You like his energy. He would need to be ready to leave some of his guys behind. Yeah. I wonder how willing he is to do that, because all of his guys are like Arizona guys. Like you got to be willing to leave some of those guys behind. You can't be Jonathan Smith and come with all these West Coast guys to the Midwest. I mean, you got to come and adapt. And I'm not just talking about with style. I'm talking about with people. I thought one of the worst things that Jonathan Smith did was he came in and he wasn't recruiting any of the guys. Like, any of the guys around here, like, what are you doing? Like, you got to come and recruit the footprint. And so he's going to have to leave some of his guys behind in Arizona State. That would be number one. But take that Oregon mentality and still apply his energy that he has, and see no reason why he couldn't be an extremely successful, because I think he was going to, like, he was nailing the Dante Moore recruitment. He was doing really well in the Brice recruitment. Like, that dude in the big time quarterback recruitments, he was showing up. So I think I like Kalen DeBoer more. I just think that Kalen DeBoer is less He's more sure. He's more certain in that Kalen DeBoer has won at 3 different places now. He's won at Fresno State. He's won at Washington. Now he's won at Bama, albeit not at Nick Saban level, but there's a reason. I mean, you're following Nick Saban. So you've proven that you could do it on 3 different stages at varying levels in a pressure cooker as the lead guy. And there's something to be said for that. And that doesn't mean that Dilly can't do it. But he's only been doing it for 3 years and he hasn't been in a pressure cooker yet. And so there's risk involved. That doesn't, like I said, doesn't mean he can't do it. Just don't know. Just don't know. So if I got to choose, I'm choosing the guy that I know is going to be able to do it based on his history. And that would be Kalen.
Sure. I do think the Courtney Morgan factor matters also because he's among the top couple guys. And like you said, Sam, he's not just a GM that's putting the contract type stuff together. I mean, like you said, he recruits actively, evals, like he's the guy turning over the rocks, handing them off to the assistants to make the offers and start the recruiting process too. So I agree.
I liked Kalen. I was talking about Kalen DeBoer before he had Courtney Morgan. Talking about Kalen DeBoer before he had Courtney Morgan. So how about this? I like the next guy we're about to talk about. I like Jeff Brohm. I like Jeff Brohm, and I would take Jeff Brohm over Dilly. And I like Dilly, but I like Jeff Brohm for the same reasons. So how about that, Don McGlynn? Since you think it's just a relationship thing and I know Courtney, an existing friendship, no. Because I know guys who know Dilly too. Here's what you need to understand about me. See, I don't care who the coach is. Don't you know every coach who's been at Michigan, every single coach who's been at Michigan, don't you know I've gotten inside? Y'all haven't figured it out yet? Every single person who's gotten in there, I've been fine. When haven't I been fine since I've been doing this? You think it matters who's going to be the coach? You really think it's going to phase me anyway who the coach is going to be? It's not. We going to keep rolling, whoever the coach is. Please believe me. So it's not that. I think Court is going to, if you're talking about upside, I think Court gives them maybe the greatest upside, but who's to say? Who's to say? How about this? I'm just throwing this out there. I'm not saying that this is going to happen, but why couldn't Dilly get the job and go poach Court? Why not?
I was actually going to say that. I was actually kind of wondering, like, I know he's followed DeBoer the last 2 spots, but he hasn't been with DeBoer his entire career, and we know that money talks. I mean, I that was something I thought too.
Yeah, and Court's a Michigan guy, so if you want Dilly to had the best chance for success, and he's not a Midwest guy, you want to give him the accoutrement, you want to give him the best tools. You say, hey, Dilly, we about to go get you the top GM in the game. We're going to go get Courtney Morgan and bring him home. That's what I would do. But I would say, if it's me, you asking me what coach of the mix I would go with the guy who's the most proven of the bunch. The guy who's coached the most places for the longest and won the most in those places. That's why I say Kalen DeBoer. And I know he's a genuinely good dude on top of it. Just to me, he's Dusty May. A lot of the things that I loved about Dusty, listen, granted, I know I knew Dusty personally. I've only interacted with Kalen, in a limited capacity in the past. So obviously not nearly as much as knowing Dusty from, past from like 20 years ago. So it's not the same. But having interacted with Kalen some in the past, like he is just a genuinely good dude on top of being a really good coach, in my opinion. So anyway, let's talk about
Let's talk about that statement you made with Brohm. I want to go back to that.
To Jeff Brohm? Yeah, Jeff Brohm.
I'll be honest, I don't agree with that. That's okay. That's just my opinion.
Tell me why you don't like Brohm. Because I
didn't say I don't like Brohm. You said you would take Brohm over Dillingham.
I would.
Why? Why would you say that?
Well, Jeff Brohm, if you check the tape, Jeff Brohm is an outstanding offensive mind. He is terrific X's and O's wise, explosive offenses. A guy who has also won everywhere he's been. Western Kentucky, Purdue, who we saw him take to the Big Ten championship. Now at Louisville, won 8 games 3 years in a row. He's a guy who, is gonna win. And then on the recruiting side of things, I think and we'll get to that, I think he's gonna bring some muscle to the table, some big time muscle to the table. And then I also like the fact that he is a guy who knows what it means to be in this footprint in October and November. And this is one of the things that, frankly, if I'm looking at Kalen, I'm like, if I'm looking at Dilly, if I'm looking at the other guy, it's going to be an adjustment. I'm saying it's going to limit them out of the equation. But I know this guy knows what it means to be in the Midwest in October and November. He's been in this region at that time of year. And even if he's been a guy who's thrown the football around the yard at that time of year, he's known how to survive, even though he's been at lower programs. Now, it hasn't been with great talent. He's had a couple guys. He's had your Rondale Moores and George Karloftis's, but those are few and far between. He's had a guy here and a guy there, and he's been able to have some success, but he's never had a treasure trove of outstanding talent. And I would love to see a Jeff Brohm with his outstanding offensive gifts as far as his X's and O's with a lot of offensive talent. When I mentioned this to DG, when I mentioned it to Devin, he was like, "Oh, Jeff Brohm." He was like, "Oh, man, that's a name right there." Whether it was every football guy that I mentioned it to was like, "Oh, man, that's a dude. That's a name right there." Now, the question that I have for him, for Kalen, is, and this would be a question that if I'm Ward Manuel, I would sit down and I would ask, "Hey, man, y'all got to be able to marry your offensive approach with playing good defense."
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. Like, you're gonna have to. You can't just be like, we're gonna shoot it out. Like, we're gonna have to scale it. We're gonna have to skip. We can't just say we're gonna light them up all the time. We got some talent on. We're gonna be able to get some talent on defense. It's not just about offense. But speaking of the firepower in recruiting, if Court is like, 1, then Vince would be like, can we call Vince? I can't call him like, 2. If I call him 2, I'm gonna get a call from Vince right now. He said, "You better not call me 2." So can I call Vince 1A? Can I call Vince Marrow 1A? Would that work? You think that works, Steve? Calling Vince Marrow 1A?
Let me just say, again, a week ago, if you'd have told me we'd be talking about Vince Marrow, it's like, what kind of world? Where are we right now? Like, what is going on? It's wild. So 1A is fine, though. I mean, yeah, Twitter must not like Jeff Brohm. I'm assuming that's why the segment of our message board seems to be going nuts over the possibility. I don't think he's nearly the fall off that people are. I do think I prefer DeBoer and Dillingham for sure. But I also, I guess I'm going to say it like this: if you had top three, if they were your top three candidates, I think that's a solid top three candidates for the job, right? And yeah, Brohm definitely has the. I just can't. Every time I think of Brohm, I think of his XFL interview on the sidelines, and there's a street fight between the whistles is another one that I always look. It's an old Vine, but it was like one of the speeches he gave. I can't remember if it was in college or the NFL. Those are the things I always think about with him. But yeah, he's had success. Winning at Purdue might be more impressive than any single job that any of the candidates we've talked about has actually done at a given program, given how difficult it is to win there. I mean, you see what Purdue's been since he left. So, there's definitely merit to that. Yeah, the recruiting stuff with Marrow, I know you know him more than I do, Sam. I know he's a dog on the recruiting trail. He always has been. We've talked about him before. I mean, he wasn't afraid to pick fights with Michigan at Kentucky when they're going after the same guys, which I think takes a certain type of mettle, publicly. So yeah, kind of an interesting, fascinating candidate to me. Not one I would have thought of right away, like when this first broke, even though there is Louisville, Purdue, he's been around the area, he knows the Big Ten. Wouldn't have been one of the names that crossed my mind, but not necessarily because I didn't think it would be that he's not capable of winning at Michigan for sure. I would think Underwood would really get to a good chance to excel in a Jeff Brohm offense, right?
I don't think there's any question. I think he would light it up. I think he probably has a one-track focus on Dilly right now. I think you probably have to. He probably have to get to know what Kalen could do, what Jeff Brohm could do with him. But I think these are dudes that could light it up. But you want to know the impact of Vince Marrow. Just go and look at Stoops. He got fired. And I don't think it's any coincidence that Vince isn't at Kentucky anymore. And all of a sudden, Stoops is, I really think there's cause and effect there. That dude, he got Deion Walker, Maxwell Hairston. I mean, you think about all the guys that they were, Deion Walker, they got him over Michigan. Michigan wanted Deion Walker. Right? So, I mean, they were getting dudes that at Kentucky that like, how are they getting those guys at Kentucky? And it was Vince. And so, can you imagine him at Michigan? And in another appealing attribute, you think about, Brohm, he coached with Tony Alford at Louisville back in the early 2000s. So it was Jeff Brohm, Tony Alford, and Ron English on that staff at Louisville in the early 2000s. TA and Brohm for 2 years, and Ron English was the DC for one of those years. So you got like a connection there with those three that makes you think that, hey, it's almost like a sure thing he would keep TA on the staff. So that's another thing that you want some continuity.
Yeah, that's a good point.
He would keep Tony Alford.
That's a good point. I mean, I feel like out of all assistants, that would probably be the one, especially for Jeff Brohm, because he's known for more so his passing offense. You keep, Tony Alford around. He's the running game coordinator essentially, and so you would have Jordan Marshall, Savion Hyder. All those guys would be happy. You would assume they want to transfer, they want to go in the portal, and Savion Hyder made it very clear that as much as he had a great relationship with Sherrone, it was kind of TA. Like that was his guy. That was his real big time connection, which stems back from when he was coaching at Ohio State, right? And so that carried over into Ann Arbor. And so, yeah, I think it is intriguing. Think of Vince too, if he was at Michigan, because he was such a thorn in Michigan's side for years recruiting. And I think one thing that makes that interesting, that dynamic, is I think you'd see uptick in Ohio recruiting. I know Vince has tons of inroads in Ohio, especially Cincinnati. And I think you would see Michigan become even more of a factor in Ohio, which would be.
And how about this? If I'm Dilly, let's go back to Dilly. If I am Dillingham and I can't get Courtney, I go get Vince. So, hey, Dillingham. We giving Dillingham all kind of game here. So,
what are you giving the
Dillingham gets the job, and you need a recruiting guy, and so you got to go for Court because he's a Michigan guy. Like, you got to go for Court first. But if he say, "Oh man, I can't just leave. I can't leave my man. I can't leave Kalen DeBoer." Go for Vince. Midwest guy, Youngstown, Ohio, recruited the area. You ask him to leave Louisville, I bet you could get it done. Just telling you. So, and you need a Midwest guy. Just try to help him out. What about Jedd Fisch, guys?
Depends on, how far away do they want to get from anything that Jim's fingerprints were on, right? I think that's the biggest question. You need to hire the best guy that you can get, right? I don't subscribe to those beliefs or thoughts. I think that's been the knock there. I talk about a guy who's been everywhere. He's been all over the place, and obviously has the experience at Michigan. Just signed the 15th ranked overall class at Washington last cycle, which is pretty darn impressive. Washington, beautiful campus, pretty decent reputation as a football school. Like, the football program's had mostly been a successful football program for the last however many years, but still signing the 15th ranked class at a school like Washington is noteworthy and very impressive. I guess the other thing I keep thinking about though is, like, isn't his wife really against the cold weather? Isn't that been a huge thing? Like, even the fact he's in Washington right now, if it came to him, would Michigan be able to convince the family to come back to Ann Arbor? I do think
him and his wife are living apart.
Right? Doesn't she live in Arizona? Right?
His wife lives in Arizona.
Yeah. So the other thing would be interesting is you'd have to believe that some former Michigan assistants would come into play as assistants on his staff too, depending. But again, another really good offensive mind who I think Brice would find a lot of success under. I know Michigan played Demond Williams really well, but I think only Ohio State really also had huge success against Demond Williams as well. He knows how to coach the quarterback position as well as anybody in the college game, I feel like. So
I'm just tripping over two things. Number one, these people in the chat talking about they take Brian Kelly over Jedd. Like, come on, bro. Really? This is come on, man. I'm just what character? I understand Brian Kelly has coached a lot of football, and I get that. If we were just talking about track record, I could probably go with that. But personality traits would just makes it a non-starter to me. I just couldn't stomach it. I don't know how Michigan fans can stomach it. Like, come on, man.
I can't fathom any vetting process where Brian Kelly is preferred over any of the names that we've talked about so far. I have a lot of experience with Brian Kelly. His wife was my high school science teacher for 2 years. I can tell you, I would not be thrilled if Brian Kelly was named
right.
the head coach at Michigan. I mean, just there's enough out there that people already know. Like obviously, right? There's so many stories. LSU obviously wanted out as quickly as possible. I mean, they did not even, they were done with him as quickly as they could get. But otherwise, yeah, I just that would be a very disappointing direction to go.
Hey, so people talk about extramarital affairs and whatnot. Listen, and they were talking about it with regard to someone not. They were saying that with regard to. I don't know if Brian Kelly was doing any of that. All right, he's not a candidate. He's not a candidate, so it doesn't matter. Here's what I will say, because someone was at all of these guys will go through thorough background checks. All right, thorough background checks. So if there's anything that is out of place, I think it will be a disqualifier. Because people keep asking that. They keep asking that. I've seen several questions like that about some different guys on here. If there's anything that is like, hey, questionable about a guy, I think it will push him down the list to answer those questions that have been in the chat. So not getting it specific about any particular guy, just to answer the question broadly, putting them all through background checks. If there's anything that comes up, of course, if there's anything that came up against, but we aren't even talking about illegalities. That, of course, that would disqualify you. But if there's something that was like negative character traits, yeah, I think it would move them down below other guys on the list, to be sure. So, what do you guys think of Clark Lee? Joe Klatt's been talking about him, and I hadn't heard when I put him on one of the updates here recently. I didn't know that Joe Klatt had mentioned him as like the top candidate. I don't think he's the top candidate. I think Klatt is saying he should be the top candidate, right? Is that what Klatt is saying?
Something along those lines. That he should be among the top, if not the top. I think it was one of the he had a qualifier in front of it, but yeah. But he was definitely on the train. I think he's mentioned him a couple times, if I can be correct.
I think some other talking heads have tried to push his name towards the top of the totem pole.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that when I wrote what I wrote, and frankly, I don't know that it will. I don't know that it will go anywhere because I don't know what the guy's buyout is, and I think that is a huge factor in his candidacy. And it could be as simple as Michigan kicking the tires to see what it is, because you don't know until you kind of contact them, because none of that information is public. So you kind of.
I feel like I think it would be tough. Vandy, I think they're in a position now. I think they just signed Jared Curtis, the number one quarterback in the 2026 class. I feel like they're going to devote as many resources as possible to keep him on board, given the season that they just had. I mean, a lot of people think he's a product of Diego Pavia, but
yeah,
dude, even having a good quarterback is not always enough to win that many games in the SEC. I'm sorry, but and he's a defensive coach by trade, correct? I mean, wasn't he Notre Dame's DC before he left? So, great coach. Would be a fascinating situation just because our former national analyst Barton Simmons is their general manager. That's a fascinating deal, and I think Barton would be a plus in that position. I think he's been a plus in the position for Vandy. I mean, we talk about how important these GMs are. You got to, by effect, you got to give him credit for some of the stuff that Vandy's been able to do, right? So yeah, that one would be fascinating. I think he'd be a quality guy as well. Like I said, I think Vandy's going to be all in on him, similar to what we saw Indiana pony up to keep. I just feel like those two programs are in similar situations where they want to strike while the iron's hot. And yeah, I'm not sure if he re-upped or not. That'd be something I'd have to look up.
I've seen
Lee. Did Clark Lee re-up with?
He did.
He did. Okay. I mean, yeah, just too many hurdles. I feel like in that situation. And the other thing about that quarterback, Jared Curtis, he's from Nashville, so it's not a deal. I think where if you get him, that he'd be following necessarily to Michigan, right? You know, I don't think that's what would happen. I think he would probably go back to Georgia or go somewhere else in the SEC. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think he go back to Georgia as well. So,
I mean, I think one of the pluses with Clark Lee is he works at a super high institution when it comes to academics. So he would understand admissions and how tough it is to recruit certain type of kids to certain type of programs, because I'd say Michigan's pretty similar in terms of academic standards. So I think that's a plus with him. I just, we talk about track records. How long is his, right? And so I think
what makes Clark Lee intriguing is their process, man. You mentioned Barton, outstanding scout. They've been very smart with how they've done things. I think their assistant GM or personnel guy, Earl Bennett, is really, really good as well. Like, they got great structure there, great culture there. I do wonder, I mean, look, there's a through line with Pavia's arrival. Part of me does wonder about that. Will they be able to sustain this success? But it takes time. Roster building takes time. So Pavia did arrive their 4th year in the program. So, I mean, it's not like, he came and they won 10. He came and they went 7-6. And then in his 5th year, they won 10 games. So the roster was maturing at the time of his arrival too. So I think you can kind of explain it as everything was coming together at the same time. I think, we'll get a really good feel for it next year once Pavia is gone. Are they going to fall completely off the cliff and go back down to 500? Or are they still going to be able to win like 8 games? Like, they're still an 8-game team? That's going to tell you something about Clark Lee and what kind of footing he has this program on, because I part of me suspects that he's built really good culture there, and they're going to be able to sustain it because you guys, there's a Michigan connection there. Drill Black's brother. I didn't even write that. His brother Larry Black is the D-line coach. So
interesting.
That's something that I was kind of looking at as, hey, maybe he's on the record. I just don't know what his buyout is. So, we'll see. One more to mention before we get out of here, guys. What about I think Jim Tressel's only come around every blue moon. I think people are trying to say Tony Annese is Michigan's Jim Tressel. Is that's what?
I'm assuming. Yeah, I'm assuming that's, yeah.
I'm from Muskegon. I don't know he would pass the background check based on.
Just put it right out there.
Based on not him, just some of the stories about some of the players and just a lot of stuff in Muskegon, and then I believe the Grand Rapids Community College program shut down after he left for Ferris. So yeah, he's done a great job at Ferris State. He's a good football coach, but yeah, I think there's a snowball's chance in hell that he's even mentioned.
No, I think they just give it to Biff before that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think they just give it to Biff before that. No, but I think the last one I was going to mention was Eli Drinkwitz. They did reach out there. That would be a tough one for Michigan fans to swallow, though, given some of his comments. He sounded like a Buckeye over there with what he was saying. We still got Buckeyes showing up in these. It's crazy. The Buckeyes still want to hear what we got to say. But anyway, what do you think about Drinkwitz?
I don't know. Yeah, wasn't that when Missouri and Ohio State were playing each other in the bowl game that he was trolling Michigan, right? It wasn't even like, I don't even think he was asked why. It was like he was like sidling up to Ohio State almost, kind of, and like, type deal. He'd be lower than the guys we talked about, I guess. I mean, again, Mizzou, not the easiest place in the world to win, but another guy with zero connections has, like you said, the perceived animosity.
Yeah.
A perceived unnecessary. That was the thing. It was like, it never made sense. But again, just compared to the guys we've already talked through, I just don't see him as comparable to really the bulk of those guys, honestly. So
I don't know how much of his recruiting success, because they've had a number of top 20 recruiting classes. I don't know how much of their recruiting success is he's a fierce recruiter and they're fierce recruiters versus the advantages their state gives them in recruiting. Like, they put their finger or their dollars on the scale. They have been for some time now. Things have kind of evened out as the NIL rules have kind of spread throughout college football. But, in the early days of NIL, their state wrote laws that advantaged them in recruiting, and they really, really benefited from that. So, is it them, the laws in Missouri, or is it him being Eli Drinkwitz? I don't know. What do you think, Brice?
I don't personally. He wouldn't be in my top 3 selections. I think he would do decent to well at Michigan, but I don't know if that's what you're shooting for this next hire, right? I think recruiting. I think he's got a great background with NIL experience and how to navigate those waters. They do run the ball pretty well, so I think he's running, game in his offense with that. You talk about working in November and kind of those later games. I think his offense is more, suitable for Big Ten football. But I think there's other aspects with him that I think are more negative. So I would put him on my lower end of my top 3. But that's just me.
Yeah, man. I agree with you. I think as far as running the football, you can make a case that his running attack, his rushing offense is the best of all the candidates mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
But his passing game, you can make the case that it's the worst of all the candidates mentioned. So I think you want Michigan's next coach to have an explosive offense. And now that coach needs to be able to marry it. Like, to me, ideally, the next coach can have an offense like the Detroit Lions that can beat you up running the football, but it can still be explosive through the air. Is that too much to ask? I don't think that's too much to ask, is it? I mean, good grief.
You just got to find an Amon-Ra St. Brown and a Jamison Williams out there to get the ball to. I mean, but Michigan is building the talent to have a multifaceted offense, though, to your point. I mean, quarterback, obviously they have one of the best young quarterbacks in the country. They've recruited the running back position as well as anybody, and they are starting to build up at receiver. And like we've said, expect them to hit it in the portal hard, right? So the receiver room should look a lot better next season. Again, hire dependent to some extent, but still, if things streamline the way we think they should, the offensive talent should be solid it'll be better again next year than it was this year.
Yeah, I don't know if we got all these super chats in. I want to make sure we get these super chats in before we go real quick. And someone asked about David Shaw. Listen, the NFL, Michigan will not be an NFL guy. I can tell you that pretty emphatically, unless everything fell through with the college guys. And I just can't see that happening. The NFL guys don't fit the calendar. You would lose your recruiting, too much of your recruiting class. You would lose too much of your roster trying to get to an NFL guy. Like, Jesse Minter is still going to be coaching for the playoffs. Who else would you be looking at? People were talking about Joe Brady with the Bills, still going to be coaching for the playoffs. Adam Stenavich, a Michigan guy. Could you convince him? I mean, there's some leeway there. Steno is the OC, but he doesn't call plays for the Packers. So could you maybe convince him to depart? Probably not. So it doesn't work out. It doesn't work out. But the super chats. Thanks for the super chat. Bennett says, would DeBoer Dillingham be the greater threat to eventually leave for the NFL if hired? What do you guys think about
that?
I think Dillingham. I think they look at him as the next Cliff Kingsbury. I think that's kind of how they would look at him. I think
teams are hiring younger and younger coaches every year. So, if he had a good run at Michigan.
That's just me. That's
a tough one, though. I think both guys, if they had a high level of success at Michigan, would be just as at pretty much anybody they hire. If you're coaching at Michigan, if you become an elite coach at a school like Michigan, you're probably at least going to get NFL consideration. I mean,
former
coordinators are head coaches in the NFL right now.
That's true. I mean, even Marcus Freeman, Notre Dame, he's getting fielded interest from the Giants? So these they're going younger and younger in the NFL.
All right. MU6993. Sam, you mentioned current coaches. I think with Kenny Dillingham, you have a better chance of retaining more. Recruiting will be great. His style fits. I know you don't have as many connections. That is not the consideration for me, especially if you say he's going to keep more of the current coaches. Then that kind of argues the contrary. That means I would have more connections if he's going to keep more of the current coaches. It is strictly an assessment of experience. That's all we were talking about. Whoever is the coach, I'm going to build connections. So you people are looking at this the wrong way. That's all we were talking about. It's not. I guess you guys are projecting. Maybe that's how you would look at it. Maybe that's what would drive your opinion. That's not what is driving my opinion. All right. Hines Ward is his wide receiver coach. Hines Ward is great. Man. He is great. It'd be tough to see. I think they would be able to keep. That would be a guy, the one guy that would allow you to maybe keep Andrew Marsh, but you'll run the risk of losing Andrew Marsh. So you guys bag on Ron Bellamy way too much without factoring in the circumstances that Ron Bellamy has had to deal with. An offense that doesn't throw the football, hasn't always had a quarterback, and then you got to go out and recruit receivers that know you aren't going to throw the football and hasn't always had a quarterback. And he got Andrew Marsh to come to commit to the class when they weren't throwing the football, and the quarterback in the class wasn't Bryce Underwood at the time he committed. It was an unbelievable recruiting job. Unbelievable. So it's
he got Travis Johnson, who I think could be the next Andrew Marsh.
Brady Marchese, he flipped as well in that class. He gets a raw deal.
Yeah, Andrew was just named a freshman All-American by 24/7 Sports. He was the best receiver in the Big Ten for about a 4 or 5 week stretch.
Yeah, the echo chamber takes over, and people just start talking, and it's like, pay attention. Like, what receiver is going to come? Like, they couldn't get receivers to be like, they go recruit them, and they be like, man, I'm not coming there. Like Deion Burks. That's a perfect example. So Deion Burks, they tried to get Deion Burks out of the portal from Purdue, and Deion Burks basically laughed at him and was like, I'm not coming there. Y'all don't throw the football.
Yeah.
And he went to Oklahoma.
That's
why it was comical when he was at they were
Oklahoma.
Story.
Yeah.
Michigan didn't recruit me out of high school because I was a 3-star. True, they didn't really recruit him out of high school when he went to Purdue, but they recruited the hell out of him when he they didn't recruit him out of Belleville. But when he left Purdue, Michigan tried like hell to recruit him. He didn't give him the time of day. He said, "You guys, you got to be kidding me. The way You guys play offense? No way in the world I'm coming in. So
yeah, I don't know how many times we tried reporting, like, and they were even able to recruit him. A lot of guys just basically hung up the phone. Like they didn't even get past step one with most of the good receivers in the portal for the same reason. You know, it's like you can't force kids to go to the school. So
yeah, this is a valid concern. Yes, are we not concerned with Kalen DeBoer's inability to run the football, his lack of physical play, -3 yards in SEC title game? So this is a very, very valid concern. Yes, we are. There is an understanding that goes back to when Kalen was interested in Michigan at Washington. And I was talking to people out there when he was looking at what Jim was going to do, where he was going to go to the NFL. There's understanding he's going to have to run the football. When he took over at Alabama, I don't think they got defense right, but I think what they inherited offensive line wise wasn't ideal. They've had to replenish the offensive line to Bama level to get it to what they want it to be. There's a reason why Jalen Milroe was the rushing offense in year one. Your quarterback can augment your rushing attack when your offensive line isn't a bully, isn't a bull in the game. I mean, they had Justice Haynes, and they weren't, he wasn't killing the game down there like he was up here at Michigan. They weren't running the football really effectively with Justice Haynes and their other back down there. Their +1 run game, their quarterback run game was the run game because they needed that to be the case because their offensive line wasn't blowing guys off the ball like that. So that's a major factor. And they do need to, from an approach standpoint, they do need to adapt to that style. That's why if you get this job, you need to keep some remnants of the Michigan that's here. You need to keep Tony Alford. Maybe you keep a Steve Kasula, right? You keep some of the offense that was here, marry it with what you have, and you're not going to have that O-line issue at Michigan. Because what Sherrone did do, for everything he did wrong in his personal life, for any issues you may have had with his coaching style, what he did do was fix the holes in the last 2 Harbaugh recruiting classes. He fixed the roster holes. He replenished the stock. So the next coach, if you can keep the class intact and keep the roster intact, he's inheriting a healthy roster and a really healthy offensive line. So Brohm teams are 23 tails. Says Brohm teams are more stable. Dilly is a player's coach, fun coach. Remember, Michigan is one of the most penalized teams in the Big Ten.
Michigan is 7th in the country in least penalties per game with 4. They're literally one of the least penalized teams in the entire country, not just the Big Ten. Just to give some context to that comment.
Yeah, I don't know that it's fair to. I guess I haven't watched Dillingham enough. Just because he's a fun coach doesn't mean that his teams are undisciplined. I don't know. It's fun to attach that, or right to attach him being a fun coach to his team being undisciplined. I don't think that you make it to the college football playoff. They were picked to be 12th, and they made it to the college football playoff. I mean, I think the dude's a good coach. I think he's good. My only reservation is that he has a small sample space. It's not that I don't think he's a good coach. I think he's a really good coach. I think he's a really good coach with a lot of upside. I'm just, I'm trying to get the surest thing possible. Is all I'm trying to do. All right. And then we did the last one. We did Steve already told us why not was 20 of these.
Steve's running his own vetting company.
Oh man, it's just you grow up in Muskegon. Muskegon's the premier high school football program around there. There's a lot of talk goes on, and
Oh man. All right. So that does it for the show. We went kind of long, going over a lot of candidates. Hey, if you are not with us over on the MichiganInsider.com, you are missing our coaching search special. 75% off an annual subscription going on during the coaching search. If you missed out on this deal, normally they offer it once a year and it's gone. They brought it back because the coaching search is going on. People have been taking advantage, right? And so you can get in while we're going through the coaching search. This is pennies a day. Take advantage while you can. And this is where it all goes down. All the search updates, the recruiting updates. We haven't been doing as much of the team updates. I guess I can get into that. I have been paying attention to what's going on in practice. I don't know if people really want to hear about it because I've been, so focused on the coaching search. I guess I can get into some of the team stuff a little bit. But we give all those updates over on the MichiganInsider.com. Become a member, join a part of the family. That's where you can show us your love and support and keep us going and growing over on the MichiganInsider.com. I'll put a link to the special in the description. Those of you who are full paying members, they say, well, what about us, Sam? Well, you full paying members, you get that subscription to Paramount Plus. And let me tell you, Steve, I know you aren't watching Mayor of Kingstown. Man, this latest episode.
I got to get it started. World Darts Championships going on right now, though. I've been pretty pretty wrapped up in the old darts championship. I even got my Luke the Nuke shirt on. So, but yeah, after darts,
on the latest episode of Mayor of Kingstown is set in the state of Michigan.
All right.
It's set in a prison in the state of Michigan.
And no spoilers. No spoilers.
And let me just say, it was a prison break, and the prisoner broke out, and he went down to Ohio, and the worst thing ever in the history of the show happened in the state of Ohio. It happened in the state of Ohio. Worst thing in the history of the show, man.
What do? Plant a flag?
Man, I'm just telling you. It would be in Ohio. I'm just telling you, Steve.
All right, I'll report back next week. I'll sneak in. I'll get started. I'll report back next week. How about that?
Yep. Landman is a great show. Yeah, the entire show is set in Michigan. It is. It's out, not Landman. Landman is set in Texas, but Mayor Kingstown is set in Michigan. Someone was just asking about that. So Paramount Plus, that perk alone. Steve, you mentioned that, right?
Yep. No, that's
UFC.
Huge. First card is, I think, second or third week of January. I mean, and the cards are already better than what they were putting out under ESPN. So I'm excited. You're saving, if you're a UFC fan, like I said, you're saving a ton of money with this move over to Paramount Plus. Like $1,000 if you order more than like 7 or 8 pay-per-views a year, you're saving literally $1,000. Like it's insane.
Yeah. So if you're a full paying member of the MichiganInsider.com, you get Paramount Plus. So that's your perk. Because people say all the time, wait a minute, these people get 75% off. Oh yeah, they don't get Paramount Plus though. They get the 75%.
You want that? Trust me. Hey, shout out Donnie. I know him. Shout him out.
So come on, join the family. Hope to see you over on the board, over on the MichiganInsider.com. We appreciate you joining us on this episode. Until next time, thanks to the fellas, Steve and Brice. Thanks to producer Lance. He's the one handling the ones and twos in the background. Does a great job. We'll see you all next week on the next edition of the Michigan Recruiting Insider.